Hey guys, welcome to the Magick Bar podcast, Magic with a K. I am Vanessa Avila, and this is my dear, beautiful angel brother and friend, Anibal, and we are here to just talk about our life experiences when it comes to magical practices. I'm a astrologer, a quantum astrologer, a Reiki practitioner, and also a yoga teacher, and I specialize in yin yoga. And I'm also in real estate.
And I have a degree on theology, in Christian theology specifically, and also in pastoral counseling. Even though let's say that my path has been a little bit broader than just Christianity. A professional cook. Right now I work as an inside sales representative, and let's say that I'm just a spiritual worker. Just that.
You definitely are, my friend. You're like a shaman, literally.
Oh my gosh. Bless. I feel that when the time is right, I'm going to receive any title, I think that the spirit is going to bring the right person to be like, this is what you are supposed to do. I don't know, I feel like in one way I'm trying to leave like that responsibility for someone else, but at the same time I'm trying to accept what my mission is and empower myself. I just don't want to call myself something yet. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. I feel like when I put labels on myself, it's like I don't know what to tell people because I do so many things, and we box ourselves in when it comes to titles, when it comes to labeling things, because that's how the human brain works. We compartmentalize. I think that's how you say it.
Yeah, compartmentalize. Yes, we create like a tag for something.
Everything. Yeah. Or everything, which is Gemini energy, which is archiving. Like that's what Gemini does. Gemini archives, and then its polarity, which is Sagittarius. Sagittarius deepens the understanding of the subject.
Okay.
Gemini is just the archiver. It's like when we're babies, we start labeling everything, like box or book, or so we kind of, I think, box ourselves in when it comes to naming things.
Yeah, I guess that is just a way to start. I mean, I think that giving a name to something is a good way to understand what that is, or at least to recognize it.
Yeah.
But when your knowledge is broader than just that, I think the tags or names or categories sometimes it diminish.
Sure.
Not diminish. I think that it's just like it limits.
Yeah, but I think also in the modern world,
mm-hmm.
when I, for example, like in my real estate career,
mm-hmm.
when I started really diving deep into my astrology work and my spirituality and my path, which I've always had, it was just a hidden part of myself. When you're in a business meeting, and I learned to be very much myself no matter where I'm at, but that came with its own struggles and challenges. For a long time I felt like I couldn't use my throat chakra, and it's something that I'm still working on.
Because you're wearing such a numerical kind of world.
Yeah, and also a very linear world.
Very linear,
very logical. So when people are like, oh, like you're an astrologer, like, horoscopes, I'm like, no, like, but you can call me a witch doctor, or, it's like that terminology, being like a witch, or being a shaman, or being a druid. It's like people, like everything, and not to hate on the Western world, because we have our beautiful things too, like it is, everything is exactly how it is. But I feel like here, we don't like to go in depth in things. Like, we label things we label it and then quick, next. It's like when we're scrolling on Instagram or TikTok, 3 minutes, it's like the most that I can watch, and then next, yes. Scroll. But anyway,
yes.
Before we dive deep into the rest of our conversation, so I wanted to go over our charts, just so for astrology lovers, this is kind of our energetics. Bless up. Bless up astrology. So Anibal is a Libra, born on October 23rd. So he was born at 1:45 a.m. the 23rd. And yes, your sun is in the third house of communication, which is where you shine. You shine in your communications. So you're 29 degrees Libra, so you're almost at Scorpio. Your ascendant is Leo, and you have Mars in Leo in the 12th house, which is beautiful. 12th house is the Pisces house, is it's the cosmos, it's the connection we have to totality, dreams, illusions. So you have a lot of force when it comes to the astral realm, because Mars is the warrior planet, the planet of action. So the more you dive deep into your spirituality,
Wow.
the more your warrior comes out. Look at that. And your moon is in beautiful Gemini. So interesting, we started talking about Gemini.
Gemini from the very beginning.
Yeah, and it's in the 10th house. The 10th house is your career, your public image, your vocation. It's what you came to do. And your midhaven has Gemini and Taurus. So something to do with, it's interesting because you were a chef, but it's like interesting because if you were to become an Ayurvedic chef, it's like you're communicating, or if you like start like, even if just like this, just like our podcast, like we start communicating the things that you're knowledgeable about, because Gemini loves to share that shit.
So I'm supposed to be that's why I like to talk too much. I cannot keep myself quiet.
Oh my god, it's hilarious.
That's so cool.
It's also our Venezuelan ass like culture.
Yes. Which, as you guys might notice, my Sofia Vergara accent
It's
so thick.
Mine comes out when I'm in Miami or with like other Venezuelans. I'm just like, bro, pero like, you know,
Pero
like,
tú
whatever.
sabes.
Like, oh my god. But then when I'm like here, it's like I blend in with like the white people and have like this American ass accent. But anyway.
Oh my god.
So for me, I am a Scorpio sun in the 6th house, conjunction to Pluto. I'm very, very Scorpionic. Definitely resonate with Scorpio more than anything. My moon is in Leo, conjunction to Chiron in the 3rd house, the house of communication. So I release emotional energy through my social media platforms, through communicating with friends. That's how, because Chiron is an asteroid and it's like a wound that we come to heal. So since it's in conjunction, when planets are in conjunction, it means that it's 5 to 8 degrees apart, or they're right on top of each other. So if Chiron is a wound, it's like Chiron looks like a key. So it's like the key to our gifts. So I unlock my emotions when I'm able to shine, because it's in Leo. So this is a reason why I'm fucking doing this podcast. So I can open up that throat chakra. And my ascendant is Gemini. So it's interesting that your moon is in Gemini. My ascendant is Gemini, because we have a lot of Gemini energy, and Gemini is the sacred clown. Gemini is Hermes. I don't know. Hermes, is that
Hermes, yeah. The god messenger.
The messenger of the gods, Angel Gabriel.
Yeah.
So Hermes was the only god that could go from the underworld to Hades, to the mortals, up to Mount Olympus, to the gods. The only god that could do that. So this Greek god, Mercury, it's ruled by Mercury.
Yes.
It
Mercury
has,
in Roman, right?
Yes.
In the Roman mythology.
Yes, it has like this stigma of it being a trickster or being malicious, but Hermes was a beautiful messenger, and he was able to transcend all of these dimensions, and was the only one that could basically go down to the depths and get the most sacred knowledge, bring it to the mortals, and get the messages also from Mount Olympus and bring them down too.
And I love that you are bringing the topic of, and probably it's going to be something that we are going to like dissect a little bit more further down the road in this podcast.
Yeah.
But something that I really like about not only Hermes, but like any kind of deity on any religion overall, is that while we humans try to separate a lot everything, good or bad, we have these gods that have like these powerful swings between not necessarily good and bad, but they go from things that we might find not necessarily correct. Like we see, for example, Zeus.
Yes.
He was a fuckboy.
Yeah.
Left and right.
He was a fuckboy.
He was a fuckboy. We cannot call him any other way. With any gender, any creature, in time frame, and at the same time
I've never heard someone call a Greek god a fuckboy, but that's amazing.
He's a fuckboy, and that's what he is. However, at the same time, he's the god that not only about thunders, but also like the one that protects not necessarily the household, but like every single time that you have a guest.
Well, he's Jupiter, so Jupiter is the biggest planet in the solar system, so it's expansion, it's Sagittarius, so it's travel, it's the philosopher, but it's also protection.
But
it's the most powerful god.
And again, it's so funny that I see gods and I see them like, okay, they can do this, but at the same time they can be so dark, and at the same time they can be so light.
Fuck yeah.
And it's that duality that I want to explore in my life.
Yeah.
And when you brought up the topic of, okay, the warrior, I've noticed that the further down I go, while I more grow in this path, I also notice that only things as boundaries, self-respect, demanding respect from others, especially when you give the respect back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I grew up in this mentality of, because you're a Christian, you have to let everything in the hands of God, and you have to give the other cheek and all of that. And that's not necessarily the reality. You can be very dual. You can demand respect and be respectful at the same time. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. Well, you know, it goes down to that topic we were thinking about talking about, you know, who we are and where we come from. So, you know, we're both from Venezuela.
Yes.
And we grew up in very similar in the sense of the most dominant religion in South America and Venezuela is Catholicism.
Yeah, Catholicism.
And
Catholic faith. Yes.
And this spiritual, this mysticism is so foreign and scary that it was looked at as evil.
Yep.
Or it's the devil's work.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at it, I really connect with the archetype of the priestess and the sage, but it comes from if I look back, all of the women around me when I was growing up, they were so religious. They carried around rosaries and they were praying the rosary every day. They were doing mantras.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was ritualistic.
Well, notice that historically, the origin of the rosary is practically is inspired on, let's call it inspired, and not necessarily stole from the act of repeating a mantra. Even Christianity, Christianity, you can trace it in history to Buddhism and ergo Hinduism. Certain roots and philosophies from Christianity, historically speaking, they can be connected to this major religion that is practically Hinduism is the oldest, if one of the oldest religions in the world, in the modern world.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's actually a quite historical fact. You can connect the rosary to the mantras, like to the praying beats that a lot of people from these different cultures use. Sorry.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I mean, everything interconnects. Like the more I've learned, and I'm still learning, and I'm still on that journey. You know, like it's never ending. But it's like I want to go back to like what you were saying with duality and, you know, the stories that we have of like the Greek gods. Like for example, like Kronos is Saturn, Father Time, and Saturn is, you know, something that I read one time was that the word Satan comes from Saturn, because in Christian times and shit, like back then, they thought that the world, like the universe, ended when they saw Saturn appear in the sky. Okay. So right now you can see Saturn in the sky.
Okay.
And that's like, where do you know anything about that? Because
so as far as where my knowledge go, because the thing is that the degree that I have in theology is not like a college degree. You know, in Venezuela is what we call un técnico. So let's say that is like the associate, let's call it like that.
Yeah.
So as far as my knowledge go, the word Satan comes from the original word Satan. If I'm not wrong, it means accuser. I don't know how to properly translate it from Spanish to English, because I studied that in Spanish. I'm gonna double check that info later, and I will bring it up into on the topic of the podcast. But the thing is that the interpretation the Christians have of Satan is not necessarily the same interpretation that the original Jewish people had from Satan, because a lot of the topics of Christianity were mixed with different deities and gods from different pagan cultures. We can see right now a lot of this idea of the devil that the people have, like a god with horns and all of that, is a terrible mixed conjunction of the horn god, like Pan, from different cultures from Europe. So yeah, it's a lot of background history that is mixed there. I have not had the opportunity to read that if Saturn and Saturn are connected, but I will not imagine something. I will not think that that is a far truth. That's something that actually someone have said at one point.
I read it from one of my astrology professors. Like he was just saying that like in old times, like they when Saturn would appear in the sky, like it would be like time of like negativity or like destruction. And it's interesting because in astrology too, like there's something called the Saturn return. And the Saturn return happens between 20 to 30 years, which is like how long it takes Saturn to make its round around the solar system. And then that's like Saturn symbolically is time, father time, structure. It's
very like I will say like
harsh,
like an emperor kind of Major Arcana tarot card.
Yes, very much so. Saturn, and I just went through my Saturn return. I'm still going through it. I'm like at the ends of it. But it brought a lot of it, like Saturn kind of like kicks you in the fucking face till you
in order for you to learn,
because it's a disciplinarian, like it brings hard lessons, harsh lessons that you have to see, but it pushes you into your highest path. If you're able to accept the lessons.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No. I actually read. I don't know too much about astrology. That's the truth. I read once something about a person that they were having a lot of. Let's say that everything that they did, if they did something that was not completely right under their own morality, they were hated. Like they were dealing with the karma effect constantly in their life. And I read that someone say to them, how many Saturn placements do you have on your chart? Can you tell me something like related to that? Is it like might be that when you have too many Saturn placements on your chart, life can be a little bit more stern with you? Like,
well, it depends where you have Saturn in your chart. But that's kind of that's the difference between quantum astrology and traditional astrology. Traditional astrology, if I have Saturn, let's say in the 7th house of partnership, traditional astrologers will tell you you're fucked. You're never gonna get married, or you're gonna have this karma with partnerships forever. Some shit like that. I mean, I'm just kind of like not going into detail with that, but now with quantum astrology has evolved with the way that we perceive this reality, because the 12 zodiac signs are just 12 energies that exist in this current reality. So we're able to understand the energetics at work. So if you're someone with a lot of Saturn, so a lot of Capricorn, because Saturn rules Capricorn. It's like you might have some. It's not that it's more difficult, because life gets more quote unquote difficult when you don't have when you're not someone that surrenders, when you're someone that has a lot of control. You try to control everything in your life, so you become rigid. So Saturn gives you a lot of lessons on how to let go. When we learn to flow in the state, in the vibration, the frequency of the universe that we all have access to, because we're all the same thing. Again, these our charts are blueprints, but they're not. We have free will. So with quantum astrology, what the beauty of it is that when I have a client that comes and sits with like their chart, like, oh my god, I have like the Saturn placement, whatever, am I fucked? No, you're not. But if you're able to understand the energetics at work for you, you're able to transcend them. That's what evolutionary astrology is. That's what a quantum astrology is, where these old astrologers, these ancient astrologers, which there's not that many, to be honest. They're very harsh. But now there's so much knowledge that we have with quantum physics. Physics is any mysticism that we see is just physics that's not understood yet. That's it. But it's all science. Astrology, Reiki, all holistic practices, they all fit in the quantum paradigm. We're coming from a Newtonian paradigm. Everything is based off Newtonian principles, which is what you see is what you get. Matter is the only thing that you can, it's matter. Like this is this and that's it. Like there's no energetics behind it. That's it. Everything is linear. You know, time, present, time, future, the time, past, present, future. It's all in this own category. So we're coming from that. That's what our medicine is based off as well.
Yes.
And this is what we're going to talk about in this
in another episode.
But it's like, you know, quantum physics has gapped that bridge between spirituality and with science.
Yeah.
Quantum physics is mysticism.
Yeah. But intertwined with science at the same time.
1000%. But everything is everything.
I mean, everything is everything. Yeah. Something that I think is important to bring up is that historically speaking, because I saw a guy, I don't remember his name, I saw him on TikTok, and he has a phrase that as a theologian, I think that that phrase fits with my mentality. Data over dogma. I will never, for me to believe in something, you have to date it. You have to be able to see that fact historically in order for you to believe it. Yeah. And still, I don't find, at this point of my life, I don't like to believe in dogmas. I think that every single doctrine, every single thought, even in the spirituality, can evolve, can change according to the time and the society and the culture where you are at. And you are bringing this up. And historically speaking, magic was the precursor, like the father and the mother of what science is right now. Alchemy was the mother of chemistry. These different pagan cultures, or more like ideals, were the father and the mother of philosophy, math, physics. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like everything was born from this. And in the same way that they were evolving and we were understanding more science, we were also understanding different areas of spirituality. When people try to negate God or the goddess or the universe or the maximum code or however you want to call it, when they try to overrun that and just try to fit everything in what you can perceive through your feelings, through your touch, smell, sight. They forget that there are so much that we do not know and we do not understand. And maybe magic or spirituality is just the unknown part of science, and as we are evolving, we are going to understand it more. And what I don't like is when people that do not like science, they try to overrun science with, oh well, this is God because this is God. And me as a spiritual person and also as a person that believes in science, I immediately jump like, what makes you believe that in that fallacy? Yeah. Without measuring, without studying, without trying to understand. I find science and faith, because I'm going to call it more faith than anything else, they're going to work hand by hand. That's the mentality that I have as a spiritual person. I will always say, do your ritual, pray, take your natural tea, but when you have to take your antibiotics, take them. When you have to get your surgery, go for it. Because there's a reasoning, like there's a material reasoning, there's a human reason on what we can do, but spirituality is always going to push it further down. It's going to take it to the bigger spectrum in a way that we cannot understand yet. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I mean, I guess like touching on the topic of like medicine, you know, it's like everything, we're taught that we have to just rip it out or take it out or cut it out, and that's it, that's the end of it. But if you notice, like, things always come back.
There are cycles.
Something that I've learned recently, and I've talked to you about this before, is that we're all trying to find shortcuts to healing.
Yeah.
And there are no shortcuts. So when you are someone that, you know, and my dad passed this year of lung cancer, and in metaphysics and in Tai Chi, or not Tai Chi, like Chinese medicine and shit. Anyway, lung cancer manifests as it's a grief, or it's sadness, or it's depression. So it manifests in the lung area. So when my dad got diagnosed with that, I tried to take him to holistic doctors, and his first thought was like, don't take me to any witch doctors. I'm gonna listen to my doctor. I'm gonna take these pills. I'm gonna get this radiation, and I'm gonna be okay. So straight to the treatment. Straight to how can I get this out of my body?
Straight to the body without touching the spirit.
1,000%. And that's what we do.
Yep.
Like anytime there's any ailment in the body, it's a manifestation of something that we cannot see, our psyche, that is being manifested through the physical vessel. Everything, every ailment from, I'm not a doctor myself.
Yep.
But I've studied so much quantum physics. Nassim Harim, who's this fucking awesome, he has this course called Unified Science. I've heard this from quantum physicists and mystics, and they all say the same thing, that everything in the body, our external world, our vessel, everything is just an extension, it's a reflection of our internal world. So recently, dealing with the grief of my father, I've been finding any way to get out of that pain, to not deal with the pain.
Yeah.
I've done mushroom trips, smoked pot, done all kinds of readings and all this stuff. Being a healer and a reader myself, and a holistic practitioner, let's say, with the Reiki, with energy healing. There's no shortcut. I have to go through.
Can you say that again? There's no shortcut.
There's no shortcut to healing. You have to face your shadow. You have to walk through your own valley of your own shadow.
And now that we jump onto there's no shortcut, and you have to deal with your journey, how did you notice that you were different? Air quoting, and I'm saying air quoting because you're Venezuelan as me. We were raised in a certain way, and as you guys notice, we're gonna go to tangents, and we're gonna just freaking jump from one point to the other. I don't care. I wanna bring your past, your dad, your shadow, your family to interconnect that idea with because we already started talking and we never explained why the Magick Bar, but I guess that you guys are going to discover that further down with more episodes.
Magic with a K.
Magic with a K. What made you notice that you were different in the paradigm of I'm sorry, how do I pronounce that? Paradigm.
Yeah.
Paradigm?
Yeah.
Like dime, like the point?
Yes.
Pendejo soy. How did you notice that you were different compared with the paradigm of how your family, or the image that your family was, and who you were?
Okay, well, I'm gonna start with a story that my mom told me, that when I was born, when I was a brand new baby.
Mantilla. Oh, you know where the mantilla word comes from, right? Like you are born and you have like a veil of the amniotic sac. Right. So that was how the elders in the past used to say that, oh, this person is gonna have the gift. We never know what gift was, but they were usually inclined to spirituality, like being witches or diviners, or So that's actually from, we say, oh, está mantillado, and we assume that it's luck, but actually it's like a spiritual forte.
Oh shit, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I don't know about that, but my mom told me that when I was born, we had this nanny, like this lady that worked at our house, and you know how it is in Venezuela, like.
Yeah.
every time this woman would carry me, I would throw up on her. Every single time. Just with her.
Just with her.
Just with her. And then a couple of months later, my parents found out, like because of the gardener that my parents had, they found a bunch of jars and witchcraft dug underneath the ground of the garden that my parents had at the time. They were practicing black magic.
Okay.
So when they found that out, I mean, obviously, like but my mom has always told me that even, I remember, you know, as a kid, I would see shit. I was like the little kid from The Sixth Sense. I would see things. I would perceive things. And then I remember, like, I had no one to really talk to about this. And one of the biggest experiences that have remained and I always bring it up is that I lived in this house. I always had paranormal things around me. When my parents bought this house in the mountains, en La Puerta. Mi papá tenía una casa. They had a house in La Puerta.
I am afraid that I don't know where
por el Vergación La Puerta, por el Ávila.
Oh, okay.
Ajá.
Por el Ávila.
Creo que sí. Ajá. My parents bought this house from this couple that lost their son at 8 years old to cancer.
Mm-hmm.
When we moved there, if you see the videos, because my dad always had a camera. My dad was always taking videos, which is interesting. I just connected that. I was always talking to someone, and I remember that I would play with this little kid.
So you're telling me that you were seeing a ghost in that house?
Yeah, and I would play with
him.
And my room had all of his. It was my mom, to honor him. The couple was like, "We'll sell you the house, but can you please like honor him in some way?" So my mom kept his little paintings in my room. So I was super connected to this kid.
Okay. But was the energy of the kid good?
Yeah. There's the energy of that house was absolutely beautiful.
But that's how you discovered that you were different.
Yeah, because I would imagine this, like a sensitive kid, an empath in Maracaibo.
Yeah.
Dude, our culture, you know, everyone's a fucking bully. Like, dude, it made me tough as shit for sure.
Yes.
But it was really difficult. I felt very, very alone. But luckily, like my grandmother and the women around, the priestess that were in my lineage, in my great aunts, my mom even took me to an astrologer when I was around 7. This famous astrologer in Maracaibo. My mom was into metaphysical books by Connie Mendes, who became popular around that time. So my mom took me to an astrologer, and I remember being so fucking fascinated. I still remember sitting in the chair. I remember what the guy looked like. He was dressed in all white. There was pictures of galaxies like everywhere. Like
you were like, this is what I want to be.
And I'm like, this is it.
This is the shit right here.
But I didn't understand why I always felt so alone.
That's heavy shit right there.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and maybe I think all empaths go through that, and all like black sheeps of the family.
I think the black sheeps in general, because I think that I'm like a sensitive person towards people's emotions, but I don't feel that I'm necessarily an empath, because I was pushed since a young age to learn how to read people in order to try to calm down the energy of my environment, so we all could. I was not in a violent household or anything like that, but on my side, I was raised to try to make everyone feel happy about themselves.
I think it's a very Libra thing too, though, because Libras don't like conflict.
I do not like conflict. I rather put myself out of the conflict.
Yeah.
I leave.
Yeah.
I leave. I try to amend the situation, but if I do not see any answer, I don't see any improvement, I just take my stuff and leave, instead of putting myself on the, please, can I beg you to, even if I didn't do it, can I beg you to forgive me for something that I didn't do in order for us to be okay again? I when I finally had the opportunity to become more proud and have more pride. Ego is not necessarily a bad thing. And when I started trusting more in my ego, like respecting myself, I say, I'm going to put myself out here.
I love that you said that the ego is not a bad thing.
We
because
were
people
told,
always talking about like,
oh,
let's ego the ego. Bitch, we need the ego.
We
That's how
have-
we learn our lessons.
we have ego. Everyone has ego.
1000%.
And the thing is that we are not talking about the ego is bad. We are talking about with the balance is out of control. When we are putting too much on the right or in the left, that's when the things got crazy. Or you become an egomaniac, or you just let everyone run over you.
Well, it goes back to duality, you know.
Duality,
Hero and villain. If we look at all of our movies, all of the plays, the novellas, everything, there's always a hero and a villain, a protagonist and antagonist.
That's why I freaking love Game of Thrones so bad, because we see the good side of the villains.
Yeah.
And it's hard for us to completely hate the villains, even though there's people there that you can be like, oh, finally they died. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's a reality. So jumping back onto the black sheep thing. When I was a kid, I was not. The truth is that I saw like, goblins when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Well, in Venezuela we call them duendes.
Gnomes?
Like more like gnomes. Yeah.
Holy shit.
But it was non, because the thing is that culturally, a gnome, a goblin is not the same thing, but sometimes in Spanish, or at least in Venezuela, it's the same word.
Yeah.
So it's hard like to differentiate it.
I just imagine like the fucking Green Goblin from Spider-Man.
Exactly. I remember, I can't remember it like as in yesterday. I was in the mountains in my mother's family's house, because my mother's family, not my family, on my mom's side, they have a house in the mountains in Carayaca. And I remember that I woke up, I went to the bathroom, and when I was returning, the room was illuminated enough to recognize a shadow, a dressed shadow. And when I say a dressed shadow, I'm talking about a shadow with a three-dimensional form, dressed with a green robe and a hat. And it was like, like tiptoeing towards me, because I saw it doing like this, and I still can remember. I never saw a face, but I saw the structure of a face. So imagine a three-dimensional shadow dressed with a clothing, walking towards me, and probably was like this size. Wow. And I jumped from the door of the bathroom to the bed where my aunt and my mom were asleep, and I was like, nope, I am not gonna sleep again.
I need to pray more.
I don't know what it was. The thing is that they were Anibal. No, those are the lies. That's the thing. But
of course, there's always an excuse.
There's always something.
It's just like maybe that's Jesus communicating.
No,
I'm like, that is not Jesus, bro.
I know what I saw until this very day. I will say I know what I saw, and I associate it with a gnome. The truth is, I don't know what it was, but I know how it looked like, and because it was the first time that I saw something like that, I was so scared.
Wow.
So I cannot say that I had the opportunity to see this kind of stuff very often. I think that on my side it's been more like dreams that have come true.
Yeah. Oh wow. Like premonition dreams.
Kinda.
Damn.
And places that I went on my dream that then I had the opportunity to visit in my material form, let's say like that, like visit. For example, it's hard to explain in English. I remember that in Carayaca, I went to, in my dreams, I went to this house with the same path, with the same fences and all of that. And it was a dream. And then when I went to the first time to the area, I saw that house.
Wow.
So I don't know what happened there. And I guess that I told you already that experience where I was like in love with this girl, and this guy was like trying to bother me because he was her boyfriend and not necessarily me. Yeah. And I got home and it was like, you know what? I just released a series of words hurting him. And next day, when I arrived to high school, because I was in high school back then, I think I was like 12 years old, that guy was in a diabetic coma.
Holy shit.
So, of course, there's a lot of coincidences, and I always going to bring this up. I'm not going to say that I caused a person to fall into a diabetic coma, because he already had pre-existing conditions that I didn't know that he had. But for me, it was incredible that I decided to throw a hex, let's call it like that, towards this person, or more like I accumulated this negative energy and I throw it towards him using my words. And next day he was in a diabetic coma. Like one thing and then the other one happened. And since then I told that, I think that I told this to my grandmother, who she was Christian, but at the same time she was very witchy, kinda. And I told her that, and she was like, I never do that again, because obviously you're already aware of what you can do spiritually, like energetically. And since then I try to be as careful as possible with my words.
That's crazy. You know, you have a stellium in the third house, and a stellium is when there's more than 3 planets in one house. You have Jupiter in Scorpio, Venus in Scorpio, the North Node in Scorpio, Sun in Libra, and Mercury in Libra. You have 5 placements in the third house of words, of communication, of writing style.
So I can hurt and heal at the same time with my words.
Because fuck yeah, you can either heal or hurt with words. And it's interesting because your magic, like, you know, from the time that I've known you, you love ritual. Like, you know, like when you came and did that cleanse on Carlos the other day in my apartment. When you pray, you say shit in like Latin and stuff, like when you were doing that, I was literally like, what the fuck? I was like,
what is this Harry Potter shit that's happening here?
I've seen some shit, but that shit was crazy. That shit was crazy. And then the next day, his whole life, like, turned around. He comes over, he's like, oh, I got that job, I got this, I got that. We're all like, I remember what you did, and then I remembered your chart, and I'm like, this motherfucker.
The truth is that I mean, I never saw it like that, and the truth is that he was like having all these deals, and I mean, blessed. I'm thankful, you know. Like,
you're very powerful, my friend. It's an honor.
It's an honor. It's an honor to be with you, because you also have a lot of knowledge too.
Thank you. Please don't text me.
Please don't. I won't. No, I will not. I will not. I feel like, you know what? Let's go on to, we already like talk about a little bit of our paranormal experiences and how we like recognize how different we were from our family. Because I already told you, and again, I'm going to bring this up because for me, this is part of my duality. I noticed my difference spiritually because when I was a kid, I was very into God. When it was Catholic, I was like, I'm gonna do my prayers because I believe that this is connecting me with God. And then when I learned to create my own prayers, I was like, wow, God, you are listening what I'm saying. And then when I left like the square and a lid, the box and a lid of what religion is, I was like, wow, you can find God in so many shapes, colors, forms. Of course, very respectfully with each culture, because we own a respect of each culture when they discover God in their own way. I am always going to say that for me on my side, I was so very into God that I used to cry thinking about me praying, because I really was like, wow, God is listening, God is helping me. And at the end of the day, my faith was what saved my life in a moment of death and disease and yada yada. So on your side, you were in this not necessarily very religious family, correct?
No, it was pretty religious.
It was pretty religious. On your mother's side?
On my mother's side, for sure.
And what about on your dad's side?
On my dad's side, you know, I didn't really. My dad's family comes from Los Andes, like the Andes, and I don't think that my grandmother Carmen was. I think she was just like your typical like Venezuelan culture, like believe in God and all that stuff. But from my understanding, I don't think that they were super religious. My aunt, they pray to Jesus. They pray to very traditional. But I remember like my mom like always wanted my dad to like participate in church and like all this stuff, and he was just like hell nah. My dad was like a fucking trip, but I remember, I was talking about this. I just remembered like, being in church, and I never felt good.
You never felt
I never felt good. I felt like I was always doing something wrong, that there was something wrong with me, that I was evil, that I was demonic.
Well, yeah.
Because and then I saw so much pain and suffering around me that I was just like jaded by. I was just like, dude, what the fuck? Like, I've gone to Catholic school like forever since I was like fucking born.
Same.
And why do I see so much
injustice?
So much injustice around
and hypocrisy.
me. And hypocrisy.
Yeah.
And the kids around me, everything. I mean, I was also this was my perception too. Like of my reality. Like every child has their own perception of reality, but I was so sensitive to the subtle energies around me, and it was never right. It was never right.
Yeah.
So when I questioned these things, I was told to be quiet. You
Shut
don't know
up.
what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You're just a kid. Like,
you don't know what you're talking
but
about.
I remember specifically, like, I remember, one time being in church that I went with like my friends, and I was like, I moved back to Venezuela because I was born in Maracaibo.
Okay.
And then I moved to Miami when I was 6, but then I went back from 10 to 13. So when I went
Okay.
back to Maracaibo, more closer to teenage years, I remember there was this moment that I went to church with like a family friend or something, and I like did something wrong. Like when everybody was standing up, I like kneeled, and my friend made fun of me. She was like, "Oh my God, you don't know what you're doing!" Like so it was some shit like that. And
in the middle of the mass.
Yeah, and I was so traumatized. I remember I went home crying. I was really sensitive. I went home crying. I'm like, I don't belong here. Like I don't know what I'm like. What is this? I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like, why does this not feel good to me?
Yeah.
And then the more I grew up, like the more I had to shut that part of me down, because anytime I would speak to people about the things that were happening to me, I'm like, maybe I'm crazy. Like maybe I have this like want to be different like syndrome thing. Like
I want to be it girl.
I want to be it girl.
That it girl. Yeah.
Right. I'm like, okay, maybe it's just me. Like, cause bro, like the innocence of a child. It's like I was just like, dude, like maybe there is something wrong with me, and I can't let anybody know this about me.
Absolutely.
So I started shutting that part of myself down. But
what cost? At what cost?
The cost of the freedom of my soul.
Your freedom.
Of who I am authentically. So I've spent most of my life covering those parts of myself, and whenever I would bring this mystical side up, this darker side up, the dark feminine, or this magical fucking angel that lived inside of me, I was made fun of or not listened to in relationships, like with dudes or with my family, with friends. So I had to repress many parts of myself, and now it's like I'm seeing those, like repressing that shadow. I'm seeing like the cost of that, and I'm so grateful though for my experiences, because now, as I tell my clients that sit here with me, like, I'm learning from you as much as you're learning from me. This is an equal energetic exchange. I am not your guru. I am not your master. You are your own master. You are your own guru.
Yes.
I'm just helping people navigate the power within themselves.
Yes.
Because sometimes it's so overwhelming that you're like, holy fuck, my whole life has been a lie. I've been repressing myself. And most people don't want to see those things. That's why when we have these healing sessions, like all this shit, people are afraid of that shit. I was afraid of that shit.
We are afraid. I had a meditation. Well, I told you these days, I had a meditation where I saw a particular thing in that meditation, just in the back of my mind. I'm still debating if I actually was like, I don't necessarily think that I was astral projecting, but when you are meditating, when you create a scenario in order to induce yourself into a kind of feeling or memory, and the appearance of this particular anthropomorphic being with eyes made out of light, I am still debating if it was still like an actual being that I met, or it was something inside of me that is being repressed, that is like coming out to light finally. But this particular being presented itself as a friend. I am, because it was the first time, like first time of me experiencing that being, I was scared and I said, you know what, bye, I'm leaving, I don't feel safe. Which I find healthy. I think that everyone in any religion, you see, when they experience the visitation of an angel, God, the spirit, they are scared.
I'm like, yo, dog, like I'm not ready for this shit.
Don't be afraid. Freaking angel full of eyes and multiple shapes that cannot be understood by human, by like, the human mind.
This ain't for me.
Right. So, but again, I bring this up because sometimes this repression is inside ourselves take the shapes that we do not understand, and in order to be able to understand them, we have to acknowledge them, experience them, pull them out of the dark, and see them in the light as they are, ugly, raw, rugged. You know, sometimes those memories, and I call them memories, they don't look good, and it is hard to experience that. But the healing only starts when you accept and acknowledge what is hidden. You know.
Yeah, accepting. That is
accepting.
Accepting every part of you. What I'm learning with like one of my shamans, like or teachers. You know, part of like what I'm escaping from with like this grief and stuff. There's a lot of fear in that. Grief is a very, very powerful emotion, and you only understand it until you go through it.
Yep.
And now that I'm going through it again, because I went through grief when I was a child, like I lost like a bunch of family members, like my grandma, starting with my grandma, when I was around 11 or 12, and my grandma was like everything to me. So when she passed, then my great aunt died, then my grandfather went to the next dimension. Then it started with my aunt, my mom's older sister.
Okay.
Passed at 42.
Quite young.
From hemorrhage. She was literally, and she's on my altar. Like I know that she's one of my spirit guides, and I loved her. She was a magical human being, and my cousins remind me of her. Like I beautiful, beautiful glow. Anyway, she passed, putting keys inside her house. She dropped from a hemorrhage, and when she passed, it was like a domino effect. So there was a lot of grief, a lot of death, and that was the catalyst of my first awakening as a kid. That it made me live in the moment where I was like,
about awakenings.
Oh yeah. That's probably
we
what
need
I
to
said.
talk about awakenings because, girl, okay,
the dark night of the soul awakenings.
I apologize.
You're good.
She passed, and that triggers the domino effect in your life.
Yes. But why did I tell you that part?
So she's one of you. I apologize. I interrupted you. So
No, it's okay.
She's one of your spirit guides. You actually have her on your altar.
Before that, I can't remember.
She triggered a series of death in your life, and you started to get that awakening because of those deaths.
Accepting, that's what we're talking about. Accepting things.
Yes.
Accepting things exactly as they are. We get
painful.
We get so accepting what you're going through. Accepting, not. It's like what I was learning with. Okay, I remember what I was telling you. The shaman. She was telling me it's okay to feel fear. You know. We hear this term about what is it, toxic positivity and shit. You know,
that is the whole topic, especially with new age kind of mentality.
Yeah, but it's still like, look how we, even with that, dude, I mean, there's so many branches to that, but like one of them is like, god damn, bro, like we even hate on fucking positivity. Like the duality in everything. It's like, you're too positive, you're fucking toxic. It's like, what the fuck? I'm just fucking happy. I get it. Like sometimes people don't want to see the darkness in things. Like not everything is butterfly and roses, because it's a natural cycle of life. We have winter, we have spring, we have summer, and like like it's a circle.
There has to be death
life.
in order to something be born out of that.
Same with like death and with death, like here, in other places, in other cultures, like death is looked at as like a beautiful passage to the next dimension.
Yes.
And here it's like fucking like
we are still scared of what death is.
Yeah. And missing someone, it's always gonna be there. Like I understand that I'm connected more than ever with my father, more than ever, because he's loving me from a place of unconditional love. He doesn't have this vessel anymore, or like the drama that we attach to in this dimension.
Yeah.
He's loving me from pure source of the truth of what we are, the true essence.
Yeah.
But we have to accept everything as it is. And stop running from our shadows. Stop trying to, we do anything. We point at social groups, we point at religious groups, we point at our bosses, at our friends, at our families, and we don't want to look inside. Yeah. We don't want to look inside. Yeah. What inside is where we find our fucking gold, where we find what we're truly made out of, which is pure fucking magic with a fucking K.
That's the truth. Like you're talking here, and I'm like, praise, preach.
But it's true, bro. Goddamn.
It's true. And when you were talking about your experience with religion, what I wanted to bring up about God is that certainly religion was the vehicle for that connection with God, but certainly it was not God. Me being a queer person, recently officially come out as bisexual, or I consider myself more pansexual, but I just say bi to my family because they do not understand, like, they are still in this binary mentality of man and woman.
Yeah. And
pretty much I consider myself, I love anyone that can be my gender or their gender. I'm in love with anyone I am in love with. And even that is a hard concept to digest for our Latino culture as Venezuelans. But can you imagine that in the church, Venezuelan church, Catholic homophobia? Then I go on to Pentecostal homophobia per 2.
Holy shit.
Multiplied. And ironically, the same church that created pain and fear inside of me, in the same church that it was creating these walls in my head, that I was in denial with myself, with my own duality, let's call it like that. The same God that they use as an excuse to talk about hate was the same God that saved my life. So that's why I'm always going to go with I love God above everything, and I already see God above religion. So that's why I learn from these different cultures as far as I can, in the most humble and respectful way that I can, and be like, wow, the way that God presented themselves to these people is so powerful. It's very different. Acknowledge different religion and try to understand the different nuances on how or why they perceive God in that way according to their own culture, than trying to take their culture and bring it to me. Like me as a Venezuelan, if I learn Hinduism, I will learn it as a Venezuelan. Always. Because I'm a Latino, I'm a Venezuelan person that grew up in Venezuela. And if I learn another culture, I might understand the language, I might learn the culture, I might learn the different words and prayers, but I'm always going to see it as a foreigner. Is that the right word? Foreigner? As
someone from the outside.
Yes, as an outsider. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to disrespect the culture, because let's say that the greatest goal is to arrive to that point that I know in the same way that the person from that culture is. Hopefully that's the goal. But I will never see the faith in the same way that they do, because I'm not from there. And that nuance, I think, is important everywhere.
And I understand it.
And I bring that up because for me, meeting God or having that relationship with my faith was a whole world of difference that my relationship with church.
Yeah, with the institution.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in the way that they hate it, especially the LGBT community, and even myself, me in denial, I say so many homophobic shit. And now that I'm here, that I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? I am like, God, if I can do something for anyone, any person that have been going through the same situation as me, let me be a tool of healing because they are hurting.
Yeah.
And let me be a tool of change in order to change the space around them so they don't go through the same situation that I went through.
Yeah.
That's my goal.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
I love that.
same.
You know, we're here to be of service first to ourselves, you know, to really get to know ourselves, and to be of service to each other. Like, my humble opinion is that we're all here to be of service to each other and to Mother Earth.
Amen.
That's it. That's all we came to do. I mean, if you're not putting your little piece of love into this world, into what you do, I mean, then what's the purpose? If we don't live in love, what's the purpose of anything?
Yeah, for real. I think that's the biggest goal. And actually, well, we already hit in the time frame, and I didn't even notice it. Like, we've been just talking and talking. Oh my God, I'm obsessed. So let's to bring this onto a close, to close this episode more like so. What is the mantra of today?
The mantra of today
yeah.
is, I'm exactly where I need to be.
I'm exactly where I need to be.
Yeah,
I like
that. Yeah,
I like
that's
oof.
nice.
Yeah, goosebumps. So yes, so to close this, I will say I'm really, really grateful for meeting you and for like choosing me to. I think that we are going to talk about this, like how this podcast came to be in another occasion. But like, I'm so grateful that like we met.
I'm so grateful
because you have been such a trigger of change in my life, and I'm like, oof.
Wow.
So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
you. I feel like that's, you know, as I'm in your journey, you are in mine. You know, like I've also learned so much from you, and I'm so grateful for you. And you know, you're the one who came to me and was like, yo, like it just was so synchronistic, you know.
Yeah, hear me out.
Hear me out. And I'm like, bitch, I hear it, like, yes, let's do it.
Okay, now that we are talking about it. Okay, I literally was like, okay, girl, hear me out, because I think that this is like my third try to actually like have a podcast. Yeah. And I was like, what do I enjoy more than like spirituality and faith and growth? Who else is in the same path as me? Or more like, so who am I in the same path with? And it was like, oh my God, Vanessa.
Claro.
Por Dios. Y yo le mando, I sent a text message to her and okay, hear me out. You, me, a podcast about spirituality, like astrology, magic.
Let's name it this.
and she was like, bitch, she sent me a screenshot. The cameras and the mic. You were looking at that in Amazon, right?
I mean, dude, we're master manifestors, you know.
But is the level of synchronization, right?
Fuck like, yeah, dude. High vibe.
Okay, so thank you so much, guys, for being here with us and like listening this entire ramble.
Yeah, this is really cool. I mean, I hope to continue, you know, this flow, and hopefully next time we have more of our friends join us as we go, because we have a lot of interesting people in our lives.
We have a lot
some shit to say,
and we have a lot of people that I think that they have a wonderful point of view to bring, quite different from ours sometimes quite the same. But it will be wonderful to greet them and talk with us about this journey. And please, guys, I invite you to follow us, like be here with us, watch the videos, deal with my Latino accent.
It's fucking amazing.
Sofía Vergara, por Dios. La amo. Así que nada, bye bye and big blessings. What should we create like a phrase, like something like okay, bye,
Bless
ciao.
up.
Bless up.
Bless up.
I like it. Bless up.
Bless up.